Okay, let's look at number 4. Well, I just said number 4, that Seleucid Empire is one of the 4 noble horns. It's a noble empire. Number 6, I just said that out of one of these 4 of the breakup of the Grecian Empire, out of one of the 4, I'm just repeating what I've already said, will come one of these kings, and Antiochus is that king. Let's turn to page 52. Now we're going to look at the most difficult verse in the book of Daniel, in my opinion. Now it's describing with the little horn. Now, Antiochus didn't even get close to fulfilling this verse. This is an intense verse. And I don't know what it means, so I'm going to give you of just a few possibilities of what it means. It says, and this little horn grew up. Okay, so there's a process. He grew up to the host of heaven. What? How does a man on the earth grow up to the host of heaven? And the word host often in the Old Testament means army. The word host and army are interchangeable. He grows up. In other words, he grows in stature to where he affects the armies of heaven some way. How does that happen? And he casts down some of the host. How does a man on the earth do activities that affects the spiritual powers in the heavenly realm? That's what it's suggesting. At face value, that's what it's saying. That's just so intense that we've got to scramble to reduce this to symbolism somehow. Surely there's not a man on the earth that's going to have such a stature in the spirit negatively that he affects the host, spiritual beings in the heavenly realm. Surely there is no such man. Surely Antiochus was not that man, that's for sure. Well, the Antichrist, being this very mysterious relationship that he has with Satan himself, somewhere he grows up, meaning his influence increases in his humanity. He has this spiritual dynamic where he impacts the host of heaven. And what he does then, he casts down some of the host. He casts some of the host down to the earth. So he does something in his activity where spiritual beings are cast down. That's how it looks. You know, our team, we talk this over, and someone says, what does it mean? I go, man, it just, if it means what it says, that's so intense. I would just rather claim the 5th and say, you know what, let's wait to Daniel 105. You know, let's wait some years down the road and get some understanding. But that is what it's saying. But not only does he cast down some of the hosts, and I'm going to give you an interpretation that some have, and I don't know if it's true, but at least it needs to be considered. But he doesn't just cast down the armies, some form of armies in the spiritual realm, and again, this view that some suggest that it's demon spirits in the heavenly realm. That's where that view's going. That what he's doing actually affects the demonic realm. He has a relationship to the demons being cast down to the earth. And we'll look at that in just a moment. I'm getting ahead of myself. And again, I don't know if it means that, but it's certainly something that we need to consider. But he does a second thing. His activities cause the stars to be cast down to the ground and trampled. Now, we know that stars are not trampled down on the earth. You can't fit a bunch of stars on the earth to trample. So it's obvious that that's symbolic, the stars are. Because the simple physical properties, you can't get like a couple hundred stars landing on earth and step on them. It just doesn't work. Never tried it, but I'm just sure it doesn't work. Okay, paragraph 1. The host of heaven seems to speak of an army related to the heavenly realm. In what sense does the Antichrist cast down an army related to the spirit realm or to the heavenly realm? Is it a demonic host? That's one possibility, and I think it's one that should be considered. Is it the armies of Israel? Is it like the human armies, and he casts them down, and they're just because the God of heaven is so identified with them that when he casts down the armies of Israel, physical armies of Israel, in that sense he's casting down the armies of heaven? Well, that's a possibility. Some people take that. I think that needs to be considered. Or are the armies of heaven the saints? And this is just another word for another description of persecuting the saints. Well, I think that needs to be looked at as well. So is it a demonic host? Is it the Israel army? Or is it the saints? I have written here, this has made me feel comfortable here, there are different positions on this by theologians. No one seems very sure. I've read a bunch of them, and I went to Alan Hood, and I said, Alan, what do you think? He goes, I don't have a clue. Don't even ask me that. I said, okay, there you go. Next. And then I went to the other guys. Number two, he grew up. Again, there's this element of his spiritual stature is growing and escalating, and he does something that has a chain reaction effect in the realm of the Spirit, and it affects the host of heaven somehow. Now, here's a verse that a number have appealed to, and I think, it's worth looking at. That the host of heaven might be the demonic host. Because we know that at the 3.5-year mark, the final 7 years of natural history, at the 3.5-year mark, Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 to 9 describes something that really happens. It has not happened yet, though, again, some theologians want to make it that in the past and make it symbolic. There's going to be a war that happens in the realm of the Spirit, and Michael the archangel, who is mentioned 3 different times in the book of Daniel, 3 times in the book of Daniel, his name is mentioned. And so he's involved in this as well. And here's what happens. There's a war in the heavenly realm 3.5 years before the Lord returns, right when the abomination of desolation takes place. Michael and his angels are fighting the dragon, Satan, and Satan's angels. And Satan is literally cast to the earth. And he does not like this. This makes him so angry because this limits his influence dramatically. He has far less power when he's not in his position in the heavenly realm. Because the principalities and powers are in heavenly places. That's a strategic position where they have far greater influence. There is a time where Michael's going to rise up with a host of angels. They're going to do battle against Satan and his angels. And these angels are literally going to be cast down to the ground. And the angels, these fallen angels, these demons there will be more demonized people on the planet after this happens. There will be more demons. I can't fully picture it. I don't even want to picture it. I can't imagine what the implications for evil of having the entire demonic realm bounded to the earth, and they can't get into their heavenly realm place of influence, and they're here. And it says in Revelation 12 right here that Satan, if you read the whole passage, at the end of verse 9, Satan is filled with rage because he only knows he has a very short amount of time, which is precisely 3.5 years to go. But all the demons are now earthbound. I think it's possible that the Antichrist casting the host of heaven down, it's possible it could have a reference to that. I don't know. Again, I'm just looking at it going, I don't have it yet. Okay, let's go to number 3. I just said number 3, okay. Number 4, he doesn't just cast the host of heaven down. He says 2 things. He casts the stars down too. Now, the host of heaven, there are hosts of heaven, so we're not mandated to make that symbolic, because there are heavenly hosts, good and bad. And surely he's not casting down good angels. The Antichrist doesn't have power over good angels where he's stomping on good angels. That's not what's happening. But the stars in the Scripture are a number of times used as a symbol, or believers, the faithful, are compared to stars. There's a number of references. Like right here in the book of Daniel, in Daniel chapter 12, the wise and the righteous ones, they will shine like stars. So they're compared to stars. When the Lord spoke to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, he said to them, The number of descendants will be as vast as the stars of heaven. So there is some connection between stars and the faithful. And so most commentators, most of them, those that are more liberal and even those that are conservative, they agree the stars here speak of persecution of believers. It's not so hard to figure out the stars are the faithful believers. What's hard is to figure out who that heavenly host is that comes down to the earth because of the relationship of what the Antichrist does. Okay, let's go to top of page 53. Verse 11. He even exalts himself as high as the prince of the host. That's Jesus. Now, Antiochus did not do this. He did not liken himself to the God of Israel. He did not take on that kind of persona. He was an arrogant man, and he was a defiled man, but he didn't go to that degree where he claimed to be God. At least there's no record of that in history. And by this man, verse 11, the Antichrist, the daily sacrifices will be taken away. Now, Antiochus did take away the daily sacrifices for 3 years. So he did fulfill that part. And the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Verse 12, because of transgression, and the idea is Israel's transgression at this point in time, but it's also the transgression of the nations, the Gentile nations. It really covers both. An army, this is by God, has given him liberty to have authority over an army. Because God is disciplining Israel and disciplining the nations, it's bigger than an Israel story, because the discipline goes to the ends of the earth as well. An army was given over to the Antichrist, to this little horn. But its relationship to Israel here is apparent, because when this army is given over to the little horn, what happens is the army goes in and enforces the stopping of the daily sacrifices. Now, this is the situation we find in Daniel 11, verse 31. Again, that speaks of Antiochus, but it also speaks of the Antichrist in full fulfillment as well, where they both use their army to invade Israel, surround the temple, and stop the daily sacrifices. Okay, let's go to page 54. Looking at my time, and I need to get to this one very interesting, the last main point here. And I want to take a few moments on it to where you can grasp it. Now, this is a little bit complicated, but I encourage you, once it connects, once about 3 dates, 3 pieces of information connect, then you go, oh, it's not that complicated. It really is not that complicated, but at the first reading, you know, people have read this, they go, what is this? In verse 14, it's talking about 2,300 days. This is a very, very significant prophecy for the end-time church. So this is part of what Jesus intended when he said in Matthew 24, go study the abomination of desolation. Go study it, because you need to understand some very important implications. And this passage gives us one of those implications. Well, it starts in verse 13. He said, I heard, now Daniel's overhearing 2 angels talking. He goes, I heard one holy one speaking to another. And they were going back and forth. And one of the angels said, how long will the vision be? How long will these events continue that are related to the daily sacrifices? Not just stopping them, but even resisting him. I'm adding that dimension that the daily sacrifices are resisted. I think that's what it's talking about, because the daily sacrifices are somehow, and we'll look at that in a minute, resisted before they're officially stopped at the abomination of desolation. And that's what this prophecy is talking about. Even before the abomination of desolation, at the 3.5-year mark, even before that. And we find out when you tabulate it all up, and we're not going to break down all the details, but I'm giving you the info on the paper if you really want to know it. It's about 2 years and 9 months before the abomination. There's this resistance, there's this hindrance of the daily sacrifices. Something as the Antichrist is going to do, he's going to tip his hand And he's going to get a little bit ahead of himself, and he's going to hassle Israel while he's masquerading as a man of peace. And this is going to be 2 years and 9 months before the abomination of desolation. I say, how do you know that? Well, you got to read this page. And again, in a public setting like this, in 5 minutes, it would be hard to land it to where you could just grasp all the details crystal clear. But I think that they're laid out on the paper where you can work through them. If this is something that interests you, get together, 3 or 4 of you, debate it, talk about it, prove it wrong. Try to prove it wrong. That will really get you energized, you know. And, that would be really cool, you know, with the students, they can prove the teachers wrong. That's kind of fun. So I challenge you, students, prove this wrong. So that will make you learn every detail of it. So anyway, what happens? Let's read the passage again. These angels are talking, and one angel asks the other, how long is it going to be with this troubling of the Jerusalem temple and the transgression of desolation? By the way, that phrase, transgression of desolation, is the first reference of the abomination of desolation, because it's not transgressions plural, it's singular. It's the transgression. It's the primary transgression for which the book of Daniel highlights in the 4 visions, which is clearly the abomination of desolation. It's the translation that leads to the desolation of the nations. It says, how long is the sacrifices going to be troubled? The abomination of a desolation going to continue? The sanctuary trampled underfoot? The host trampled underfoot? How long is this going to happen? And the other angel answered in this it's seemingly cryptic answer, 2,300 days. Daniel's listening, 2,300 days. And you'll know the 2,300 days is over because the abomination of desolation will be removed and the temple will be cleansed. So when the troubling of the temple starts, and again, 2,300 days is actually 6 years and 4 months. Well, I thought throughout the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, it's only 3.5 years. Well, this angel is saying it's 6 years plus. All the other places say 3.5 years, because the 3.5 years is when the intensity begins. The 3.5 years is when the Antichrist fully takes his mask off and shows himself as a devil, as a man demonized who demands to be worshipped at the pain of death. That's at the 3.5 year mark. It's at the 3.5 year mark the abomination of desolation is set in place. But here at the 6 year, 4 month mark, it's only 9 months into the last 7 years. It's only 9 months into the last 7 years. And you can study the math to see how we get those numbers. Something happens. Number 4, the key is the sanctuary's cleansed at the end of 2,300 days. So we go to when the sanctuary's cleansed, and we count 2,300 days back, and that's when the big event is going to happen. That is going to be a tremendous prophetic sign to the people of understanding. Now, Daniel doesn't learn, we're in number 4, he doesn't learn till his 4th vision. He's only on his 2nd vision now. He doesn't learn for some years later, 17 years later, or something like that. I guess it's 15 years later after this one. He doesn't learn for 15 more years that the sanctuary is not going to be cleansed for 1,290 days after the abomination of desolation is set up. You might say, okay, you're losing me. You've already given me 5 numbers here, and that's why I have it written down. So you can get together 2s and 3s and work this thing out and say, okay, that number adds up, okay. So let's look at Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. This is 15 years after Daniel 8. Daniel gets another vision, and the mighty angel comes, and he says, oh, you need to know this. Remember 15 years ago when we showed you that the sanctuary is going to be cleansed, and you didn't know how long it was going to be cleansed? Well, let me tell you here, Daniel 12, verse 11. I want you to know the sanctuary is going to be cleansed, and the abomination of desolation is going to be undone. It's going to be thrown out and over. 1,290 days. You say, okay, Daniel's a little perplexed because The end time prophecies are always talking about 1,260 days. This is 30 days longer. The end time prophecies are talking about 3.5 years, 42 months, 1,260 days. But this is the 43rd month. It's 30 days longer. What's going on here? And I'm not going to answer that right now. But I'm just letting you know there's a 30-day extension. There's a 43rd month where this drama goes for 30 days past the 3.5-year mark. But two things happen. The sanctuary's cleansed from chapter 8, and the abomination of desolation is removed from chapter 12. Those two things are actually two sides of one coin. They are both inseparable. They have to be connected together, because when the sanctuary is cleansed, it's only when the abomination of desolation is gone, when that image is gone and the Antichrist is killed. That's when the sanctuary is cleansed. So this happens when Jesus comes. That's the point. Matter of fact, Jesus marches into Jerusalem. Here's the storyline. He marches into Jerusalem. He confronts the Antichrist. There's all the armies of the nation surrounding Jerusalem. I call it the battle for Jerusalem, the battle of Jerusalem. Many people call it that. The armies of the earth are there, and they're moving in on Jerusalem, about to overtake them. I mean, Jerusalem has been just at the last, on their last breath. They're holding out, holding out, holding out, and suddenly the greater son of David comes. Not David the warrior, the greater David comes. And he's standing outside the city. And he defeats the end-time Goliath. He casts him down and throws him into the pit. Well, actually, Jesus just blows on him and gazes, and the Antichrist is absolutely immobilized. And then there's somebody else, I don't know who, they capture him and they throw him alive into the lake of fire. Then Jesus goes into the city, and the leaders of Israel are going, "You are the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And Jesus 2,000 years ago said, "You won't see me," to the leaders of Israel, "say with their lips, 'Jesus of Nazareth is the Messiah, blessed of God.'" And they will do it on that day. And in Psalm 24 it says, "Open up the gates. Open up ye gates." And they will say, "Who is it? For the King of glory, mighty in battle, is entering." And the King of glory, mighty in battle, is the Jesus who just defeated the Antichrist at the battle of Jerusalem. So he goes into the city. He marches into the city, and they receive him. "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Just like he said, they receive him as the Messiah. He walks right over to the temple. He cleanses the temple himself. And then he's crowned king in the city. But beloved, this is very similar to what happened in Matthew 24. After his triumphal entry and his procession into the city, they're all crying, "Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Then he cleansed the temple. This is going to happen again. He's going to literally cleanse the temple again at the 1,290 days. So he returns at the 1,260 days, at the 3.5-year mark. But 30 days, there's a lot of human things going on. Jesus is not in a hurry just to end it. I mean, you know, if you watch the movies about this, there's not very many of them, but there's a few of them. Jesus comes, he waves his hands, everybody disappears, everything's made whole in one moment. No, there's real human dynamics and human process in this whole drama, and there's a 30-day series of events that actually happens after Jesus lands, as he's marching in Jerusalem, liberating the Jewish captives. He's setting the captives free, literally. He's destroying the armies of the Antichrist, and he's savoring every moment of it. I mean, he's not trying to do this like in 1 hour, let's get this thing over. It's like this is the hour of vindication he's been waiting for before his beloved people, and they see him and they receive him. Well, I enjoyed that. But let me bring this to a close. I mean, none of that was on the notes, but that was just for my own enjoyment. But here's the point. Where am I at on the notes? Let me see. Hang on. Let's go all the way to page 56, 57. Let's go to page 57. I'm just going to describe it, but I want you to know where it's at. It's page 57. Here's what happens. We start at the cleansing of the temple, where the abomination of desolation is removed and the temple's cleansed by Jesus. That's at 1290 days. You count back 2,300 days. That's when the trouble starts. Again, there's a 7-year period. The 7-year period starts with a covenant of peace. Everybody's saying this man is a man of peace. Beloved, he's hiding his true identity from the nations. He's the most evil man that will ever walk the planet, but he looks like a prince of peace. He made a covenant. The nations are exalting the covenant. We're saying no. No, this man is a devil. You fanatic, you religious fanatics, here we have world peace, and all you can see is that man is the devil. He is the devil. And we say, here's what's going to happen. In 9 months from now, 9 months from now, this is the power, this is the practical application of this vision. 9 months from now, it's 9 months into the final 7-year period, which is 2,300 days from the end counting backwards. It brings you to the 9-month mark, and again, I have the numbers written out there for you. We're going to tell, or the church, if whoever's here, they're going to tell the people who they've studied the book of Daniel, they say, you wait, in 9 months from now, this man is going to show the first sign that he is a deceiver. He is not a friend of Israel. Yes, he is a friend of Israel. He swore, he made a covenant with Israel. He made a covenant with all the nations. They go, you wait for 9 months, and then suddenly 9 months will go by, and this will be 2,300 years from the end, counting backwards. All of a sudden, the Antichrist is going to disturb the temple sacrifices. He's going to say, you know, on second thought, I think that we're going to do this. And the Jewish leaders are going to say, wait a second. This is a complete backing off of what you vowed to us. He says, yeah, but that's how it's going to be. They're going to say, wait, the first sign of his betrayal. And then the people that you have, or whoever is alive at that time, says, they're going to say, how did you know that this man of peace was going to show his false colors at the 9-month mark? We say, right here in Daniel. And they'll say, where? 2,300 days, 1,290 days, the temple go, what? But it's right here in the book. Then we're going to tell not only the nation of Israel, but we're going to tell the nations, you have 2 years and 9 months before the abomination of desolation. This is a warning because the prophetic scriptures are true. The man did show his deceit right here for anybody that's paying attention, but it's going to get far worse at the abomination of desolation, which will be 2 years and 9 months, and we have that much time to warn them with the sign of the times of this prophetic event happening 2,300 at the 2,300 day mark. Now again, I realize you've only heard this for 7 minutes, and you're going, the last 7 minutes I focus on this, you're going, what? The 2,300 years. So I don't expect you to walk out of the room and somebody quiz you and you be able to say this. But here's what I want to leave you with. I want to stir up your holy interest and hunger to say, okay, he said something's going to happen 9 months into the 7 years that we're going to be telling people, once this man makes the covenant, we're going to say, you wait 9 months, something is going to happen. He's going to show his betraying heart. We're going to show his deceit. We don't exactly know what the event is, but it will be crystal clear. And you say, okay, that sounds pretty important if that's really what this is saying. And so I want to stir up your holy hunger and imagination and your curiosity and to go after and learn these details, because again, they're a little bit hard to communicate if it's the first time that you've seen it. Now, we have a little map for you. Let's look at slide number 4, and we'll end with the slide number 4. I have it all, we have it written out there. Nick Syrett made this. It's brilliant. It's very, very clear. And so I'm not going to go through this right now, but you're going to take these notes and you're going to take this map and you're going to get a couple friends, and I want you to find a loophole in this. Find where it's wrong. So I'm giving you a little human motivation. Go after this. And okay, let's find that. And you'll learn, because all you have to learn is what the 1290 days and the 1260 and the 2,300 days counting backwards, and it's not that hard. And once you get it, it would be like, I got it. I got it. It's not that, wow, I get Daniel. Well, don't go there yet. It's still Daniel 101. Remember that. Amen.